are taking, this is our time. Just breathe, this won't be a hard fight. The truth cash shadows in the night.
All right, Richard, what's up, buddy?
Hey, how's it going? Happy New Year, Johnny.
Happy New Year.
This is our first show of 2025, so it's exciting.
Excellent. Got a good guest too. Happy about
Yep.
that.
Yep. So what have you been up to? How was your holiday? How was your Christmas?
Everything's been really good. For those of you that have followed the Sasquatch Encounter Brigade, or my work in general, every once in a while I get personal and talk about what's going on in my life, and people may or may not know that we've been trying to have another child, and we have been successful. My wife is now pregnant, and we're looking for baby names. So it's going to be another little girl. So we're ecstatic about that. So that's been going really good. On the research side of things, and I was thinking about this the other day. Now, you and I, we both have our side projects, and came together to work on this. And probably for the most part, the people that have been watching this know us from our other channels or whatever. But for people that don't know, me and Richard both do our own research. We've researched together. We research with our own teams. And probably what we need to do is you and I sit down and have.
Okay, hold on. All right, we're back. I don't know what that was. There was a glitch. Can you hear me, Johnny?
Yeah, it was probably just on your end.
Glitch there. Okay, that was weird.
All right, everything good to go?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Hear me? It shows I got a good signal. Yeah,
it's all good. Fine. We'll work through it. So anyway, what we probably need to do is have a podcast where each of us kind of go over our own stuff while we got into it, tell our stories and all that stuff. But here recently, over the past 2 years, my research has kind of finally come together after almost 7 years of doing this in one particular area at the very back of my property, to where over a period of usually September, October, and November is what it was in 2023. This year it was September and October. Let's say I go out to that specific spot 50 times in 3 months. I'll have 5 or 6 evenings where there will be activity. I'll go out there, I'll do a wood knock, and then they will come in. It might take 5 minutes. It may take 20 minutes, but they'll come in, start throwing things, breaking things, running around, and, basically just hanging out. And every once in a while they'll come up. There's been 3 different times where I've recorded where they've ran up behind me. And every time they do it, I'm shocked. I think I'm paying attention. I think I'm ready. But somehow, some way, they always get up behind me. And, I'm doing it in the dark without a flashlight. And I'm just responding to things as they happen. And I was trying to think, the technology is about the only thing that only advantage that we have over them. Technology and the fact that we can communicate in mass with each other, and share information. So I was trying to figure out how in the world, what I need to do here. I've got to know where they're at in order to be able. My hope is to get them on thermal, record them thermal imager, but I got to know where they're at. And just because there's a noise or a break or whatever, does not mean they're out in the open. It's just it's been very difficult.
Oh yeah.
So I started. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Well, what I was going to see, because Randy's in there, is like you said, I think thermal's the way to go. I think 100% thermal's the way to go. And, unlike Randy, he's got the thing. He's got a drone that has thermal and night vision. So,
oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think when it comes to vision, I think night vision is good, but I do think, generation 3 white phosphorus night vision with the ability to record would be superb, only because you can't hide eye shine with those, right?
Right.
And it's pretty easy for them to, I mean, I'm using thermals when I'm doing this. Anyway, so I started kind of thinking, how in the world do I detect them and where they're at, and hopefully give myself the upper hand. And I did a little bit of research and came across ground-based radar systems. And there are several companies that make these systems, and most of them are military contractors. And I started looking into them, and I sent emails to a couple companies trying to get quotes and blah, blah, blah. And I sent a message to a particular company and was just straight up with them, just took a chance. Hey, look, this is what I'm doing. This is who I am. This is what I'm doing. This is what my needs are. Do you have something that can do that? And surprisingly, they contacted me back. And the guy actually set up, I had a conference with him yesterday and just explained everything to him. And you want to talk about, the guy was super helpful, uh, obviously very open minded. He said, and I was like, look, dude, I knew, first of all, thank you for just contacting me and being willing to sit down and talk about this. Because I know most people,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
for a company, get an email about Sasquatch research, they'll probably just be like, whatever, this has got to be so and so down the hall messing with me, is what I figured would happen. And he explained everything to me, showed me that he's got a perfect unit. The military's using it. You can take it out in the field with you. This is one of these things that I was really like, maybe I shouldn't mention it to other people, until I use it for a year. But obviously, it's super expensive. You can get, like, the cheapest unit they have it's about $20,000. And I'm like, dude,
Dang.
out of my price.
Do they take a check?
Yeah. Good. Um, but I asked him, I said, is there any way to actually just rent a system? And he said, yes. Um, you can actually lease a system. I was like, what? Are you serious? So he's actually going to sit down and he's going to work out a contract, a lease agreement. And if it's affordable, I mean, we're talking about technology that could literally change the face of, if it's affordable, will change the face of, Sasquatch research in general. Can you imagine having a piece of equipment out there with you like that? That will, the lowest bandwidth is the one we're looking at. That it comes with a backpack, it comes with a monitor. You set it up, and it's got a 90-degree field of view, and it tracks movement. Like, they've had people that are using it for wildlife, for tracking wolves, tracking bears, and the military. We're talking about, I think it's 136 yards out for, the cheapest one they have. So if, actually get this agreement, and I told him, I said, look, dude, um, I named 10 people right now that would love to get their hands on something like this. I mean, this is something that, like, a lot of researchers, if you can make it, that's the biggest thing when it comes to research in general, is the cost. And a lot of us do this out of our own pockets, intentionally, to try to maintain credibility, and it gets expensive. But technology is it's our best tool to actually get to the end of this, to actually get some answers. So I'm waiting on that, and hopefully that comes through. We'll see. Maybe we can work out a deal, and then I'll start telling everybody who the company is and the price and all that stuff. And, maybe we can open this thing up and get this piece of equipment in the hands of everyone who does this.
Oh, it sounds awesome.
Oh, yeah.
The
So
cost doesn't.
no, the cost, paying for it does not sound awesome. But like,
It's-
Randy Harrington, some people have the money to do stuff like that. I know Randy Harrington, he talked about, I think he paid something like $40,000 for his drone or something crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. I just know it's really nice. I've seen it in his
Yeah.
videos, and the footage he gets is amazing. I've seen the thermal and the night vision it does. It's pretty
Yeah.
amazing. Pretty amazing.
So, and like I said, this is, a lot of us that do this are competitive. Everybody wants to be the first. But the fact of the matter is, I would just be happy. It doesn't matter who gets, to me, it doesn't matter who proves these things exist. I just want
Right.
people to know they exist.
Yep.
Of
That's
course,
where I'm
I
at.
would love to be the one to do it. But even if I can't afford to do something like this, somebody will. And people need to know that this technology exists, you know. Dirt Road Bigfoot said $20,000. That's Randy
That's right.
money.
That's Randy money.
Yeah. But anyway, anything you want to talk about before we bring on our guest?
No. Just getting into the new year. It's already been busy with me, already
Yeah.
working double shifts already and stuff like that. You know, on a sad note, one of my officers who's been with me for quite some time was diagnosed with liver cancer, and it spread to his stomach, and he's been transferred to Tampa General Hospital, which is a lot better hospital than we have in this area. So prayers go out to him. I really hope that he beats this thing. It's tough on my guys because they're all really close team, really close knit group of guys. Really good about policing themselves. They do things together outside of work and stuff like that. So it was a big shock, and so we're working through it. And prayers go out to Joe. So
Yeah. Prayers to Joe. Sorry to hear that, man. I know that's rough.
yeah, kind of changes the dynamics, but I told him, you know, we'll get through it. We'll be all right. So Randy says, sure, anyone probably has to be competitive. Maybe not competitive, but if that's motivation is good. Oh, anything's motivation. You know what I mean? I'm like you. I share everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If somebody came and said, hey, I want to go, take me to your place, I'll take them to where I go. I share everything because I'm with you. I don't care who finds this thing and proves it and does all this stuff. It's got to be done. And the
Well,
more
if
people
anybody,
out there doing it.
yeah. And the thing is, it only takes one person to really get some really good evidence. And then what that will do, it will open up the field for everyone, for universities and, you know, private entities to actually be interested enough to start funding some of this research.
Right.
You know, so a win for anyone is a win for all of us, right?
Correct.
So and I've always been super open about my motivation, and that is to be able to look at Mrs. Two Bears and say, I told you so. And that's it.
My motivation is as soon as it's done, I can go back to fishing.
Oh man. All right, you ready to bring on the guest?
Yeah,
You wanna
really excited about this. David Sidoti is a fantastic guy. If anybody's ever had the opportunity to meet him in person, I have a couple times. He's just a great guy. He's just nobody. I've never heard anybody say anything negative about David Sidoti. The guy is just great. I like talking to him. I like seeing him, and so I was really excited when he said he would do the show. A little bit of scheduling issues trying to get him in, but we got him here. He comes with a great background. He's been doing this for, I believe he said 29 years. He's a researcher, investigator, survivalist. He's at home in the woods, and it's just been fantastic to have him here tonight. So let's bring him on and let's get it going.
All right.
Hey,
David,
guys.
how you doing,
Hey.
buddy?
Good.
Hey, Dave.
Congratulations, Johnny, on your soon-to-be newborn.
Yes. Thank you, sir. You know, I'm only 44 years old. I'll be in a walker when she's graduating.
And
It's
yet
great.
he already
Excited.
forgot what he went through with the other ones.
Yeah.
Here's a reminder.
Yeah. Well, I actually have help this time. So
Well, there you go. Yeah. You'll have some
Yeah.
a little bit more help on than last time.
Oh yeah.
Thank you for having me on the show. What can I say? It's going to be great, I guess. Thank you for the intro.
Yeah, man. Heard nothing but good things.
Oh, good. That's what I like to hear.
Oh yeah.
But I guess I'll just jump right into it. I guess.
Yeah, man. Go for
Yeah,
it.
start out and tell us what got you interested, and go from there.
Okay. Well, as now that I've been in this for a long time, I hear the same kind of story of how other people got into it, but I, as a kid, about 7 years old, and of course, me and my brother used to run around the woods. And back then, most kids don't do that too much these days, but we, from sun up to sundown, we're out in the woods playing around, making tree forts, acting crazy and exploring, and that's what we did. Is mostly as growing up as kids. It was probably the late 70s. When I was about 7 years old, we watched the show called In Search of, narrated by Leonard Nimoy. And that night that we sat down and watched this particular episode was the Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin film, or known as the Patty film now. And with our little experiences running through the woods and building tree forts and doing all the crazy stuff that kids do, I watched that thing cross the sandbar there, and I was like, wow, I wonder, that would be really cool if something was like, really out there like that. And so that stuck into my head for the longest time as a kid. But then, of course, as you grow up and you move on, you do other things, and kind of gets way pushed back in the back of your mind. It wasn't until mid 90s I was getting into the computer field industry, and so I did, jokingly, of course, whatever popped in my head that time, I said, well, heck, I'm going to look up Sasquatch, Bigfoot, and see what's out there. And I found a lot of interesting things. Found actually people that were going out into the field looking and researching for these things. And I thought, man, that's intriguing. And that right there, I think, kind of sparked the fire, so to speak. So for the next few years, I started doing a lot of armchair research, reading reports upon reports, hundreds of thousands of reports in the States, and eventually out of the country. And as I was reading all these, I wasn't picking up exactly, but every time I would get, it's kind of like reading a book you don't want to put down, right? So every encounter, it was more intriguing, and then I would pick up patterns of these creatures that, this creature over here in this part of the country is kind of doing the same thing this one is doing over here on the opposite side of the country. So I started learning these types of patterns and living habits and areas, and these started to become known things that they were doing. So I started picking up these little tidbits, and so you start jotting that stuff down, in different parts of the country, and that they do the same type of thing. And I will admit, back then, everyone was kind of leaning towards an undiscovered ape, and I'll tell you now, for the past 10 years or so, I've kind of gotten past that notion that these could be 100% ape, or apes at all. They're very intelligent. But anyhow, going back, when I first got started into this, picking up all this information, it wasn't until probably about 3 years into it, I started saying to myself, I need to, get with some other people and get boots on the ground and get out here and put this knowledge that I have stored up in so many years already, put that to use and see if that information I've learned doing armchair research is applicable in the field. And I wanted to see if that stuff was really out there at that point. So and then for the longest time too, before I got out in the field, I wanted to be sure what I was researching and studying had value to it, and I thought to myself, to figure that part of it out, if it has any kind of value, you have to go out there and do it yourself, be a witness to what you see in the field. So that's what I started doing, and I got signed up to a large group that was actually starting out in the same time, getting bigger as the years go. I was with that group, and that was the BFRO, and I think I was with them probably about a year. I think it wasn't too long, not as many as long, but as long as some other people. But I started seeing things there. It just didn't really sit well with me. Um, so I ended up doing this on my own. Started going out on my own, and I met a lot of people in the field in the process, and a lot of people that were very helpful too on things in the field. So I started going out on my own and doing this, and it was a learning experience for one. I remember camping in Ocala in a primitive area, which I really liked because it had the Florida Trail on either side of it, so you can jump on either side of the Florida Trail, go north or go south. And I really liked that spot really well. So that was kind of like my base camp when I started doing this. And some nights I would be in that camp. So I was a primitive site. So sometimes I'd be there just by myself, the whole weekend, which was nice. And I would walk the trails at night, no lights, nothing, armed with I had a flashlight with me just in case, but I would have an audio recorder and a camera just in case, I were to have an experience out there with one of these Sasquatches. But you learn real quick on who else is in the forest out there. And I ran across this group, what they call the Rainbow Crowd, which evidently it's a group of gypsies that they hunker down in the forest, not in like the pay areas of national forest, but where they just come in there and they camp wherever they want to, and they'll stay there for a couple months, and then until the forest rangers kick them out or what have you. So I ran across a couple of those one night, and that kind of puts the hair on the back of your neck up because you don't know what to expect. After that point, I decided, yep, it might be a good idea to, carry some protection with me. So, not so much for, fending off bears or what have you, but human as well. It's just a good idea for me anyhow, personally, it's a good idea to carry something to protect yourself. So, after a few months, this was in the end of 99, 2000, coming up in 2000, I think it is. And a couple of people, one of them, the guys on our team, his name's John. He contacted me out of the blue. I think he heard of me from BFRO or something. And he said, "Hey, are you still doing research?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm doing it all the time, pretty much." And he wanted to hook up with me and to Ocala. So me and him hooked up for a good while and started doing that. And that got me thinking, there's other people that wanted to get into this and do it the right way. So at that point in 2000, I started the Independent Sasquatch Research Team, which I set a goal or what have you to create a team that would actually work together and not, fight against each other. And it goes, like in my bio that I have, basically there's some, some standards we like to kind of live by, and that's what I call dignity, honor, dignity, honesty, respect, compassion, and loyalty. So with those key things, it kind of builds up the what I call the common goal. So people have those attributes, and they keep within those goals, those attributes. People get along really well, and once you get that established, that you're working with the same like-minded people, you can now move forward into, what you want to do, what goals you want to seek in this field. And that's what I was kind of looking for even back then. Because what we don't need in the research field is, a bunch of, people arguing, complaining about, little things, this and that. And we should be focusing more so on what we're actually doing out here, trying to discover these creatures and learn from them more. All the other stuff, goes by the wayside. But that's the main reason why I created the team. And over the years, probably the past 10 or 15 years, I've seen a lot more people picking up those attributes, not by us, of course. I don't know if our team shows leads in as an example or not, but hopefully it does. But I see a lot more people leaning and working towards that goal, which kind of makes me happy to see that happen. And but I understand there's still a lot more other people out there that like to stir up the nonsense. But if we all get on the same page and we know why we're in this for the reasons we should be in it, I think the research itself would flow and go a lot better. But I started that in 2000. So this year will be 25 years since I started that. So got a lot of good guys on the team. Some have been with me almost when I started it. We lost a couple of people, unfortunately, passed away, but we're still here. We're still doing our thing, and we enjoy it. I enjoy it very much. So, as Richard may have said, I haven't physically had an encounter with these creatures, but I have had. We have been in areas, and I have been in areas where these creatures have been in the area. I've heard everything from whistles to, of course, wood knocks, yells, screams, things getting thrown at you. You've seen a lot of tree structures, breaks, that sort of thing. Footprints, of course. All the everything that you can imagine, except for actually setting eyes on one of these creatures. But I think my day is coming soon, so hopefully.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing is consistency, and you're definitely a consistent individual. So
Well, I think you
it's
hit on
probably
it
only
with,
a matter of probably only a matter of time.
It is. It's a a lot of luck and being in the right place at the right time. I think that's you can have the best equipment out there, like you were saying earlier, but everything's got to line up together, and you got to have one of these creatures in front of you to be able to capture something on. And I think what I was talking about between apes and these things that being more human like, because they tend to be, and like I said, I've kind of walked away a little bit for them being on the ape side of things, only because I've heard it a couple of times, and it's kind of sunk into my head too now. And Les Stroud even said that. He says if they were apes, wouldn't we have them in a zoo by now? If there's some sort of ape. These are much higher intelligence than even apes or any other kind of animal on the planet or creature on the planet. Even just by going off of the reports that we read, people say, well, what's the best evidence that you have? And I always tell them, I said, our best evidence that we can acquire and go on is eyewitness accounts. And that's true. Eyewitness accounts. I mean, you have to filter through and vet a lot of people from the fakery and all that sort of thing, or just people trying to get their name out there and be famous or make a joke about it. So that's a lot a lot of that work falls on our side here to filter through that. But
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
Randy brought up a good point, and I've said this in the past. Randy said it in the past, that it's a numbers game, and the more you're out there, if you got a viable area, the more
Yeah.
you're out there, the better your chances.
It
Better,
is. It is.
you
And,
know.
and with eyewitnesses reports, I've had probably about a handful of them that people will call me up, especially after doing a podcast show or something. Hey, I heard you on a podcast show, or got my contact, and they would call me or email me, and they'd say, hey, I had an encounter in so and so area. I said, oh, that's really great. Wonderful. I said, my next question would be, when can we meet up and you can take me to the location? Because that's putting your money where your mouth is, kind of thing.
Right.
A lot of people now, there's a double-edged sword, because a lot of people are probably scared crapless to go back out there in the location that they saw something, or they're either just lying off their butts. So I try to get that feel for, is this actual report, or are you just joshing us and wasting our time? So I do a lot of that with interviewing people, and asking the same sort of questions over again, and asking them to okay, did this happen? And while you were doing that, what else can you tell me that you were doing? What were you doing before all this happened? Just trying to delve in, trying to paint a big picture of what this person, his experience or their experience was. And sometimes, a lot of times, eyewitnesses will forget certain things, and it could be little things, because a lot of times they're just, I saw it, it was hairy, tall, black, and they leave out all the other details. So you have to kind of dig into it a little deeper with them, and tell them to calm down, take a deep breath, and tell me step by step, slowly, exactly how this all went about. When they do that, or they write it down, that's another key issue. Is a thing I tell people, or eyewitnesses. I say, can you write this all down on a piece of paper? Because when you do that, instead of talking about it, when you actually write something down, your 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 brain is physically having to write things down coming from your memory. So they may think in their heads like, oh yeah, that did happen, before this happened and this happened. So they piece it all together themselves. And then when you come back to it, the puzzle pieces all start coming together, and you see the bigger picture of the actual encounter. So it's a lot of helping the individual, get through the encounter and try to piece it all together, because that helps us as researchers to figure out, what actually went on. Just like watching a movie, if you miss something in the movie, you can always rewind and and catch it, right? So that's what you kind of have to do with eyewitness encounters and reports, and it's a little tedious at some points. Now, some people, I mean, they can tell you word for word, from minute to minute, exactly how it all went about, and those are the easy ones. Those are nice. But sometimes a little difficult to get some of the information out of people, but you just have to work on it, and you know the things to ask, and when to ask them.
Quick question for you. Do you post these reports that you take?
I do. I put them on our website.
Go ahead and tell
Actually,
people where they can see those reports at, please, sir.
yeah, our reports are, you can go onto our website. It's isrtusa.com. And you can look us up there. And it's going to be on one of the links there. I'm trying to figure out how many links I have right there. And
Yeah, I was checking it out
it'll be on
earlier.
it'll be on the information. I think it's on the information. So on the researchers or field research tab there. There's also, audio and video you can see, and the sounds that we got. and there's a lot of information, prints, and there's more stuff there that you can see. The audio part is really interesting. I was telling Richard coming up, and next weekend we're going out to a location where we've gotten a lot of audio and a lot of strangeness out there. So I'm hoping next weekend, actually it's going to be pretty cold out there, so I'm hoping we'll get some action, because I've experienced, and so has my team experienced here and it's in the Green Swamp of Florida. It's pretty much kind of like Central Florida. If you see, if you know where Walt Disney World is and all that, it's Green Swamp is immediately to the west of that. It's not far, so we got a gentleman coming out there. Actually, I talked to him this week, and he said he'll come, but he had an encounter this year, February, I think it was, and he's a hunter, and he had an encounter of something running across the road in front of him on two legs, covered in hair, and he kind of caught a glimpse of it as he was turning his head back towards the front of his car or his vehicle. And he says, all I saw was something tall, hairy, and ran on two legs. And he told me exactly where it was at. So I'm hoping he'll be able to take us out to that location. And but he's going to be camping with us that weekend as well. So he's had a lot of things happen this year during hunting seasons, of audible things that he wasn't really picking up on, that it could be Sasquatch stuff. So while he was out there camping, he was asking me questions through text about, hey, do these things make this noise and this things make that noise? And I was, of course, responding back to him, say, yeah, they could. We've heard whistles out there in that location before, and we heard those same sounds you're hearing. And he goes, well, it's happening right now as we speak. And so I was he was getting kind of nervous, I think, with all the stuff I was telling him. And he actually had to sleep with one of his handguns with him close by, because he wasn't taking any chances. But because he said they were pretty close, the sounds were pretty close. So he's going to talk to us about that. And there was another gentleman I met a couple weeks back when I was in the area, in that same location. He's a young guy. He was probably in his 20s. And I was going to go in and do some hikes and put some cameras up, which I did. But since it was during hunting season, I was at my truck. He was coming out of a gated area. And I saw some people with orange on. So I walked up to him and I asked him, his name's Reese. I didn't catch his last name yet. I didn't want to, and I probably won't get out his last name, of course. But his first name's Reese. And he was sitting out. He came out from this location where we're getting a lot of this action coming from. And him and his dad's hunted out there for years. And he actually proposed to his girlfriend the time I ran into him. And they were coming out as I was wanting to hike in there. And so I asked him, any hunting going on back there? Did I need to put some orange vest on, that sort of thing? And he goes, no, there's no hunting back here right now. And he goes, why are you out here hunting? And I said, well, not for deer. And I have a card I carry with me. I don't know what I do with my cards, but I have them. But Richard's seen, but it's like a little business card type thing. I carry with me in my truck and carry on me when I'm hiking around. So I give him my card, and it's got all of my information on it. It says Independent Sasquatch Research, and here's my phone number. Here's my name. If you see anything like this, contact us. So I gave him my card, and he's looking at it. He looks at me like dead serious. He goes, dude, I got a story for you. And I always love that when I give my cards out. And so he's commenced there to tell me about his encounter. At the time, this happened about, he said, 7 or 8 years ago. And this is the location we're going to be going into next weekend. um, he said this happened about 7 or 8 years ago, and he said him and his buddy were camping in the campsite, and they were coming out. They were going to go to the store for. He goes, I can't remember why, but we're going to go out and to the main road and go to the store. Um, but as they were coming out, both of them had to go pee real bad, so they were looking for a spot to do that. But as they were making this turn, there's a sharp turn that you make on the road coming out from the camp area, and there's trees on the right hand side of the road right there. And his buddy was driving. His buddy was in the passenger seat, and his buddy said, "Hey, there's something here, and you hear that in the woods." So Reese stopped his truck, and he hit his he had a Q beam or a light on his truck, so he flipped his light on over there and shined it over there just in time to see what looked like a silhouette, something in the wood line. And you can see it stand up, and its head turns and just looks dead straight at him. And he goes, when it did that, he said they saw these huge red eyes looking back at him. So he said, we didn't know what the heck it was. He goes, it was like a few seconds, and then he said this thing just turned and bolted through the woods. He goes, this wasn't no hog, this wasn't no deer. He said it sounded like a bulldozer going through the woods. And he said it freaked them both out so bad that they turned. He says, I gunned that truck and did a fishtail and came back to the camp, and they sat in the camp. They made the biggest fire ever and sat around there, and they didn't go to the store that night at all. They said, heck with that. So while he was telling me all this, of course, I'm asking him questions about, what did it look like? How tall was it exactly? And he said this thing was every bit of, and he was looking up at this tree at the time. He said the eyes were about at least 8 feet off the ground. And he said it was bulky. It was big. They could see the silhouette of it. And he said, but he goes, man, this thing the speed of this thing was amazing. And they joked around afterwards and said, "Oh, we could have saw Bigfoot and all this stuff." And for years, they just thought it could have been a Bigfoot. They didn't know what it was exactly, but it did scare them. It did scare them. And so he said, "This confirms, that this could have been a Sasquatch." And I said, "Yeah, I said this area right here is pretty active." And so I told him about a little bit of the history of that area, and he knew a lot of it because him and his dad hunted out there for years. And I said, the guy right across from that area, right? He's got that fenced in area, his private property. He's got deer feeders out there, and he leases the property out to deer hunters to come out on his property and hunt deer. So he's got deer feeders sitting out on his property. And I know there's a couple of deer feeders that are in that general area to where they saw this creature. And there's a fence all around his property, barbed wire fence. And I said, probably what you guys did is that you messed up his little hunt there. He's probably using the tree line as a hunting blind, and he's probably waiting for these deer to come up into this guy's property to the deer feeders to pounce on these deer. Easy pickings, right? And that's what these creatures do. They do that, or they'll actually go into deer feeders and eat the corn off of them too. But many years back in 2008, me and Diane Stocking, she was with the BR4O when I was joined, and she left as well. But me and her become really good friends, and she helped me a lot in the field. And one weekend we were out there. I was with her and a couple other teammates, and there's a fire break not too far where this guy where this guy had his encounter 7 years ago. I told him, I said, well, we got little infant prints in that area, in that fire break right there, where it goes right up into that guy's property. I said, we got about like about three imprints crossing the fire break, and they're real small, but bigger than a regular infant print, of course, wider. The wider the foot was much wider than but that an infant would make, and of course I think it was 6 to 8 inches long. So he thought that was intriguing. He thought, man, he just kept telling me, man, that's wild. He goes, that just proves the point, man, that we probably did see that see a Sasquatch. And I told him, I asked him about how far the eyes were apart, and he goes, they were at least a good 6 inches apart, 6 or 6.5.
That's
And
a big boy.
They were wide. He said, he goes, wasn't no owl. He goes, no, sir. Wasn't no owl, wasn't nothing. He said there's nothing I've ever heard or seen before. And but hopefully I told him if he would to kind of get on our website, and submit his encounter. He was going to get with his other buddy and tell him he met me and all that. So hopefully they'll get together. Maybe we'll hook up sometime. But I try to do that when I'm out in the field. I see cars around when I'm hiking. People doing the same thing hiking. I'll put maybe my card on their windshield or something, because that's the people that are going to see these things usually, is when you're not out there looking for them. And and those are the people I want to be in contact with me.
Well, that's one of the things I used to say is it's happenstance.
Yeah,
most of the sightings are people that aren't looking for Bigfoot. They're hiking, camping, fishing, hunting, and they just happen to be at the right place at the right time.
Well, I think that sometimes I feel like when I get out there, they know my intentions and they stay away, or they'll throw things at me or whistle.
So what is let me ask you this: what is, when you first started doing this and started getting out in the field, what happened the very first time that made you think to yourself, all right, I definitely need to keep doing this because these things are real? Did you experience something like that? That
eye-opening moment?
Eye-opening moment? Gosh, it had to be once in Ocala. A gentleman from California came out with me one time, and he actually drove all the way from California to Florida. Me and him went out and spent a couple good weekends. He was here. He was a contract. I forgot what kind of work he did, but he was a brainiac, man. He could go in a then Radio Shack and probably build you a drone from scratch out of that place. That's how smart that guy was. But me and him went out in Ocala, and we hiked some trails at night, and it was cool during the wintertime. And we ran across like 2 bobcats just hiking down the trail, just crossing in front of us. Saw some panther tracks out there, and we were getting in some of these areas where they the roads are really super sandy. It's hard to even hike through because it's like beach sand trying to walk through that. But these are roads where they clear cutted some of the area out there for pine, and then they just got overgrown some of the roads. Sometimes you have to duck. That's how overgrown it was on some of these old roads. And it was just a old pine forest road that was going deep into the Ocala. And I tell you what, man, it was me and him. We had to sit there and rest because the sand was kicking our butts hiking through that. And we're just sitting there, and it was deathly quiet. And you can almost hear a pin drop in the clear sky. You can see the stars, like you can reach up and touch them. That's how dark it was out there. And me and him were just sitting there real quiet, no lights on, of course, just resting, catching our breath. And it was just deathly quiet. And we could hear something heavy, about maybe, I'm guessing now between 100, 150 yards away. You can hear something just crunching around and stop. And it wasn't like a deer or a hog. I mean, you can hear it just crunch, crunch, and then it did that a couple times and just stopped. But it was just eerily quiet that whole time. That's when we kind of felt like we were being watched, and you can just feel like something's staring at you, but you're looking around, and you don't see anything, but it just feels like a presence is there. The other time was in the Green Swamp, of course. That's when we heard a yell off in the distance, which kind of, to me, it resembled to a lot of us of something imitating an owl, or not an owl, but a coyote. Because it started off like a coyote, but then it just at the very end of it, I was like, yeah, that's not a coyote, not at all. So that's probably one of the first times. Of course, the 18-inch track we found in Three Lakes Water Management Area here in Florida, Central Florida, South Central Florida. That was very impressive. So the prints that we saw were more like indentations in the ground. Would be too hard to cast, so I took pictures of it and measured, of course. And it was like 7.5 inches wide by 18 inches long. You can see the toes. This thing was actually, there was a small pine sapling about 6 or 8 inches wide or in diameter. So actually I had to take the picture like around the tree like that and snap it, because it looked like this thing was leaning up against the tree with his feet out like this. I don't know if you can see that. But it's kind of like leaning up against a tree with his feet pointing that way. And Diane Stocking was with us on that trip too. And what intrigued us there in that area is that we found a little area where it had like palmetto bushes and palm trees. It looked like a little, I don't know, out of the blue, out of the woods, just like this little oasis type of a thing. And I said, let's go check this place out. This kind of looks out of the ordinary, so let's go over there. And that's when we found all this stuff. Diane found there's grapefruit, and you can see these pictures on our website, where it looked like fingers had took the grapefruit and peeled it apart or broke it apart like this. And she said that she looked into the skin, and you can see teeth marks in there, like some just ate all the fruit out, left the grapefruit skin intact, pretty much like it looked like that. It was still connected. Of course, it was old. It's probably been there quite a while. I think she sent it off to try to get some DNA off of it, but it couldn't get any DNA off of it. But we found palmetto bushes that were just completely flattened down. I don't know why. It looked weird. There's about 3 or 4 of them like that. The only thing I could think of is maybe these things are using them as a back scratcher, flattening these things out and just, doing that roll, trying to get that itchy spot. But it was kind of weird because there's only a few of them like that. And then you saw the grapefruit was peeled up. And then the other thing about the grapefruit is that all the seeds were in a nice, neat little pile. There's 2 piles of grapefruit seeds. And I was like, well, a human wouldn't have done that. A human would have just chunked the seeds or spit them out and what have you and gone on with life. But that's 2 little neat piles of grapefruit. And these are wild grapefruit trees that grow in Florida, and they have orange trees are out as well. They have wild, and they're all over the place in the woods. But that was pretty amazing to see, and that kind of, especially the size of this one, and a lot of people here, I've heard for many years from different people that have been here longer than I have, that say that these creatures don't get any bigger than 6, 7 feet tall here in Florida, and they're not as big as the Pacific Northwest and all that. And I said, well, I beg to differ. I mean, I'm seeing big tracks out here.
Right.
I'm not seeing small ones. I mean, we're seeing those too, but as far as an 18-inch or 19-inch, there was a 19-inch one that came out of.
Well, like this was that when Meldrum, when me and you were there a couple years
Mhm.
ago, and I got one of the copies. This is from Patty, and I believe this is 16 inches,
That's 16, yeah. So
and you've got something bigger than this.
right.
You
There was a 19-inch track in the Green Swamp that got pulled out by a couple a few years back. I think it was 2019. It was 2019, yeah. And they weren't looking for these things. They just saw a couple prints and are like, they probably saw what they do on the the shows and make a casting of them around and got some casting material or something. But they casted it because they saw, man, that's a huge foot, And actually, there was another print there, but it wasn't as good as the other one. So they casted the best foot that they saw. But that just goes to tell you that these creatures are a lot bigger than what some people think they are. Uh, the other thing too is there's a gentleman on Marie's team. His name's Mike. You probably met him.
Aguilar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He contacted me before years ago, before he even thought about getting out here and doing this kind of stuff. And he contacted me and told me about an encounter he had. Him and his buddy were in a car years ago, and he saw one cross the road. His buddy was asleep, I think, and his buddy was thinking he was full of crap, with what he saw and all this. And he goes, "No, man, this thing ran across the road on 2 feet." So he was telling me that story, and that was cool. And he went out to an area that he goes to. He does a lot of fishing, and he one day when I was working, he sent me a picture across my phone, and that's I think I have that one up on the website as well. But it's a cypress tree where it's wedged into an oak tree that kind of wise out. So this cypress tree was wedged in like this with the root ball sticking up at the top and the top of the tree down in the ground. He sends me that picture, and he goes, "Dave," he goes, "what am I looking at here? What does this mean?" And I said, "Wow." I said, "That's the first time I've ever seen something like that in Florida." You always heard out, Pacific Northwest or Canada where they, the trees are shoved in the ground, the root ball sticking up. That's the first thing that came to my mind. Is like, wow, that's pretty incredible. So again, that was
how big were these trees?
that tree. We measured as probably about good 20 inches in diameter.
Good Lord.
And so, of course, that was another outing in that area to go check that out because a couple of the guys on our team went out there and with Mike, and we had to either hike out there or bike out there. So we all got bikes and we got out there with all our gear. And I think Mike even had a makeshift wagon he hooked up to one of the bikes and pull our gear behind there. Interesting thing is when we pulled up to this location, as soon as we pulled up to where he's going to take us to where this tree was that he took a picture of, I heard this shrill whistle off to my left, and a couple of us kind of looked at each other and said, and I had my recorder going, but my recorder didn't pick it up. Unfortunately, I said, "Did you hear that?" He goes, "Yeah, this is a shrill whistle." I said, "Yeah, it came." I asked the guy, "So where'd you hear it from?" And he goes, "Over that way." And I said, "Yep, same exact area I heard it from." So as soon as we pulled up, it's like we got a shrill whistle, and whatever that meant to them, hey, there's people in the area, be careful, be cautious. So we never heard anything else more like that whole day. It was just a real loud, shrill whistle. There's nobody else out there in that direction anyhow. So we go there into this tree and we're measuring all this, and we're looking around. I'm taking measurements, taking pictures and videos of this tree area. I'm asking Mike questions about, well, is there any other cypress trees in this general area? And he goes, no, man. He goes, the closest bunch of cypress trees is probably about 150 yards or 200 yards that way. And I said, okay. So I'm thinking it for a minute. I said, well, something had to bring this tree over and shove it between this oak tree, this in this manner. And I said, "Well," I said, do you fish all out here? Yeah, he goes, yeah, a lot of people fish here. Some they do hog hunts out here, And so as we're looking around, taking more pictures, there's a huge imprint in the ground. And now, picture this in your head. Here in Florida, we have a lot of pine trees, pine needles, a lot of tree litter. So that's what's on the ground, and a lot of it. So I'm looking around. I just happen to look down, and I see this huge imprint, and I'm like, that's interesting. And it's about 2 or 3 feet away from this tree that was shoved into this upside down into this oak tree. And so I did some measurements on that, and that thing was at least, give or take, about 18, 19 inches long and pretty wide. I took a picture of that as well. That was pretty, and there was another imprint not too far from it, of a distance, maybe a stride length of, I don't know, it was pretty close. It wasn't like a long, lengthy stride walk type of a print, but it was probably a good 2.5, 3 inches apart. No, not inches, but feet apart. So there was 2 imprints. One was bigger, of course, than the other. So I'm thinking the terrain, where the terrain was, there wasn't as much as pine needles there to get that full imprint of the other foot, the other footprint. So I told Mike, I said this would be a good area to come back into and research, and I think that's what kind of got him started into it. It got him more intrigued. I said, once you get that Bigfoot bug, you just either dive in it with both feet or you don't. But I think it intrigued him enough, since he had an encounter of one time of one crossing the street in front of him. He wants to know more about these things. So that kind of probably sparked a fire in him to learn more about these things. But that's probably what got me in. Of course, the whistle sounds, the wood knocks, the yells, the imitation sounds that they make, the weirdness that we find out here. Again, I'll tell you about that. A lot of weirdness.
You talk when you say weird, are you are you talking about kind of paranormal or
paranormal?
woo,
Yeah.
or yeah?
Well, you could say woo. I'm not afraid to say woo, and I know people are either one way or the other. I'm like, well, I always look at it as a scientific way.
Yeah, you got to report. I think it's you got to report what happens.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, and you can't pick and choose what you see or don't see. Or believe or not believe. That's not how science works. Science works with facts.
Exactly.
And so I know there was a big issue with people not dealing with other people if they're into the woo or paranormal stuff and they don't believe one way or the other. I'm thinking to myself, well, that's not very scientific, because all that science, it happens. It's all part of energy, and we're all connected to energy. And so I never do that. I put it on the mystery table, throw it on the table and come back to it later if I don't understand it. I never throw it out the window and never think of it again. But I've had some weird, strange things with game cameras where I baited up areas. And it's happened to me on 2 different occasions. I baited up an area, one in particular where we're going next weekend, where I set up a game camera on a big oak tree, where it had almost like one of the limbs was almost like a shelf kind of thing. You kind of dipped down and made it like a little shelf type of thing. So perfect area to set up bait. So I put all kinds of stuff. I was throwing everything, the kitchen sink at it almost. I had mangoes. I had melons, and I would cut these things up. So get the smell get out into the air. So I cut the melons up, cut the oranges up, the bananas, and the only other thing I had with me as a bait was a Snickers bar, and I stuck that thing right in the middle of it. And excuse me. And so I put my camera up, got it all set up, and I go to camp. Next morning, I get up, check it, right? So I'm getting the camera out, get the card out, put it in the card reader, looking at it, I was like, huh, that's strange. I got videos of myself, of course, in the beginning. And then all of a sudden, I'm looking at my card reader, and it's telling me file error. And I had about 9 or 10 of those. And then all of a sudden, it just picked up again. Next morning, see the sun coming up. Different clips of the video. I had it set for 30-second clips. And I always leave my cameras on video. I never do pictures because I want to see locomotion of these things if you catch them on game cameras. So I found that odd. That was the second time that happened to me. And I thought to myself, man, that is so weird. So I didn't catch anything in the middle of the card, the SD card. I caught everything the beginning at the end, but in the middle of it, you never saw what took all the bait. Now, all the bait was gone, and the only thing that was left was a Snickers wrapper laying on the ground. The Snickers was gone. All the rest of the bait was gone. All the fruits and all the stuff I had laid out there. But nothing on video. Yeah, the game camera. That happened to me before in a different area. And that's the one reason why I set this bait up in this area, to see if it would do it again. Of course, it did it. So that got me thinking more about infrasound. And if it could disrupt electronic equipment. And I'm not sure. I mean, there's some testing you can do. I'm sure Todd talked to you about that on the last podcast show.
Oh yeah. That's a question I have too.
Yeah. I've heard that the same exact thing happened to another researcher. And as a matter of fact, before I can get it out of my mouth, he goes, "Don't tell me, file error." And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah, happened to me too." And he said, "All the bait's gone. You didn't, you got everything before and after." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah, I don't know what that is. I don't know what they do to do that, or if it's them,
I've had it happen to me too.
Yeah, Richard's had some weird stuff happen with the Google Photos issue.
Yeah, that
was one of the weirdest technical difficulties I've ever heard of. Have you told David about that?
No, I haven't. No.
Well, you'll have to.
We got time. Tell him real quick.
I'll try to. It's a long story, but I'll try to wrap it up really quick.
Sure.
So, we were out in the woods, and we actually had a documentary crew out there documenting what we were doing and filming and stuff like that. So, I was running. They said, just research like you usually do, and we're just going to film you doing what you usually do. So I'm filming and I'm recording and I'm doing everything I usually do. So a lot of weird stuff happened. We had a drone that flying over us for a very long period of time. I have a drone and I get 25 minutes worth of flight time before I have to bring it back and change batteries. This stayed above us for hours, and we could hear it, but we never could see it. And so that in the video, we're discussing the drone, and you can hear the drone in the video. So there's no lying that there was a drone flying over us. And so anyways, long story short, I get home, I go through my editing to put out my information on my channel, and there's nothing there. There's nothing. And I'm going through everything, and I'm like, where is the footage? And then I'm thinking, I'm a dummy. I didn't hit record or whatever, So I start second guessing things. So like a day or two later, I'm looking at everything. I was like, man, that's just not like me to do that. So I thought, well, maybe I just got too much stuff and it didn't save it. So let me just delete some stuff.
Right.
So I don't know if you have Android and you use Google,
Mhm.
whatever you take, like if you took a picture right now and you go to Google Photos, it's the first photo. Okay.
Right.
And you work backwards in time to your oldest photo.
Mhm.
So it wasn't there. So I'm scrolling. I said, well, I'm going to go all the way to the very oldest stuff.
And Sasquatch erased Richard off the planet.
All right. I'm back. See, I'm talking
There
about
he is.
crazy stuff, and crazy stuff happens,
Exactly.
you know? So
So you went to the bottom, and
I went to the very bottom, which
yeah.
was, so I go all the way to the bottom, and there's the footage. And it's dated, get this, December 31st, 1969.
Wow.
And there's no Google back then. There's no cell phones back then. There's nothing back in 1969. So why was it dated at that date? See what I'm saying? The very next photo after that was me and my twin brother at a motorcycle rally in 2009.
And he sent me a screenshot of this.
And I
was
can't
like,
explain it.
good
That could
God,
be-
man. What? That's super weird.
Okay.
And I
It could
still
be-
have it. I won't remove it. And
That
it's
could be
still,
big. It could be Big Brother looking at you and looking over you too.
well, and that's what I said. And it was really funny because I was one of these guys that was like, oh, you guys are crazy. Crazy stuff like that don't happen in the woods. And you say that until it happens to you.
Now
Then you're like, oh.
yeah. That was weird. Now that was very weird. Now there's a couple other weird things that happened. It was me and two others hiking down a trail going towards an area what we call Knox Creek. And it's just a nickname we call it because there's a creek and there, we've heard knocking around it. So we're hiking out there at night, and it was probably about 50 degrees out, and we're hiking through this little service road trail, and we hit 3 spots. Oh, there it is. Okay,
Look at that. There's the date.
December
See,
31st.
that's a video
1960.
playing.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
1969.
that's
And like
weird.
I said,
Wow.
that's me and my brother. And look at the date. 2011. I thought it was
2011. Wow. That is wild, man. That's one for the books.
Can't figure it out. I've shown
Yeah.
it to many people and we don't know.
Well, these 3 areas that we ran into, we were hiking along. You can imagine it's dark out. We had our lights on, just on red, hiking down this trail just enough so we can see. About 50 degrees out, and we hit there's 3 areas we hit. The first area, immediately when we hit it, it warmed up about a good 15, 20 degrees warmer than what it was. And there's an electrical burning smell in the air. And this is out in the middle of nowhere in the woods, there's no electrical anything around out here. And so we all felt it and smelt it. And we all just in unison just stopped dead. We're like, do you feel that? Do you smell that? The temperature just kind of went up a little higher. And we sat there for a while, and it's like, man, that's weird. So we continue on. We hit 2 other places like that on this trail. Same thing. So as we went past and we went around, we're trying to get to Knox Creek and did a little research out through there, and then we're coming back. And I was kind of intrigued if we were going to hit those 3 spots again and get the same feeling, which we did. And I'm just like, man, this is so weird. I've never had this happen to me before. This is weird. I've never felt this before ever in the woods, and it was kind of weird and mysterious to me. So while we were looking around the area, by that time I hit it with the white light, and I'm looking around. I see a sapling off the trail a little bit, and it was about 7 foot tall. At the top was broke off and snapped. And I said, man, what's the chances? I said, what's that mean? And I said, man, that's weird. So I marked the area where we found it. And I said, let's go up and check the other 2 places. The second place, same exact thing. And there was another sapling that was broke off about 7 feet further off the trail, though. off into the woods. I said, look at that. I said, that is crazy. And we went to the very first spot we hit coming back out. Same temperature, feeling and the electrical smell, of course, but this time there was no sapling broke off in that area. But I just felt that was pretty strange and weird and unusual. I've never ever had that happen to me out there. And I know what electrical burning smell is because I used to work with it for, like electrical work. And I worked at the railroad for many years, and we had a couple mishaps where things got smoked and you get to recognize that smell pretty often. But the other thing, it wasn't too far from where this was. It was another area that we go into, and there's a couple ponds out in the very back of this area that we drove to, and it's pretty nice because you can sit out there and no one will bother you. It's dark at night, and you can just sit there and listen to everything. Put your audio equipment up, and put your night vision, thermal, and we were scouting around, and I just happened to look back towards where we were camping at, and it's about 3 miles. And I'm looking up in the sky, and I'm looking at this thing float or hover up in the sky, and it's radiating a blue, red, and a greenish or turquoise type of light, and it just kept twinkling or fluctuating up there, different colors like that. I'm like, what the hell is that? And
How high up are we talking?
well, we were at least 3 miles away from it towards the north, and this was towards the south. And I know it had to be past the camp where we were camping at. And we know that there's a cell tower there with a red light that flashes on. We know that was there. We can actually see that. But this thing was way above that, and it was just hovering. So I'm thinking, I don't know, a couple hundred feet, maybe 300-400 feet above that. And it sat there for the longest time. It just hovered there. And first, we got tired of looking at it. That's how long it was sitting there. And for one, I knew it wasn't a commercial drone. The batteries would have died on it by then. We sat there and just watched it for at least 30 minutes, and then, got tired of looking at it. And then during the day, we looked in the same general area where we saw it, and there was nothing there. And that was the first time we saw it there. And I think Bill Hewitt, he lives in South Florida.
Yeah, we know Bill.
Yep. And he calls me up one day. He goes, Dave, you'll never guess what we saw down here. And he was around the Okeechobee area, Lake Okeechobee. And he was telling me, he says, that thing we saw up in the sky up at the Green Swamp? And I said, yeah. He goes, well, we saw something similar down here as well. He said, did the same thing, same colors. And and then it was another time after that. We're back up in the same area, and this all was within maybe a 6-month period time frame that we went back into the Green Swamp. And I got a couple of other people to go out there with me towards these ponds and hang out there for a little bit and look back, and there it was again. It was still sitting there. And but during the day there's nothing there. I mean, it was almost like it was sitting right in the same spot.
What was the length of time that you actually watched it? Was it 20 minutes, an hour, 3 hours?
It had to have been 30 or more minutes.
Okay.
And we're just I even at night I got my binoculars out to even try to get a closer look, at this thing. And it would sit there and do like this.
Now, did it move in that 30 minutes? Did it seem to go a little higher or a little lower at any time?
It just seemed like it was kind of like stationary. It was just kind of, if it did move a little bit, if it very, very lightly moved.
But not up and down in perspective of the horizon.
No, not up and down. It's just kind of like like if you would see a ball floating in midair, kind of like that. And I told everybody, I said, I think we're seeing a UFO. you know,
Yeah.
I think
There
but
was one time I was camping and I was doing a live spot while I was at the campfire. And I'm one of the ones that had not seen an orb or anything like that, you know. So as I'm talking to the live chat on YouTube, I'm looking and it's probably a good 500 yards away. There's this tree line. And so I knew it was in front of the trees because the trees would have blocked it if it was on the other side of it. But it went across the sky like this. It undulated up and down, you know, like this, just straight across,
wow.
you know, that tree line. But it was pretty far away. I would at least say 500 yards, maybe a little more. That was the weirdest thing I've ever seen
Yeah.
at night.
Carol Ann used to be on our team. She's one of the ones that passed away. She was a really good researcher. She was half Cherokee, and gosh, I think it's been 9 years now that she's passed. But she would see orbs out there as well, and she would hear uh, wolves. And of course, we don't have any wolves in the Green Swamp.
Hmm.
We have coyotes, but not wolves. But she said no, these were wolves. Like she can hear them, but she couldn't see them. It wasn't until one weekend a gentleman brought a casting down from the land between the lakes, and he had this medium come out to the location. I didn't know she was even coming out. It was just, hey, we're going out this weekend to our regular area and checking, doing some squatching. Excuse me. Well, this medium was out there, and she was holding onto this cast that this guy named John wanted her to kind of get some feelings on. What are these creatures? Tell us if you can tell us about these creatures. And that's the first time I've ever been around someone like that. And I was like, okay, that's kind of creepy, but I'll roll with it. So in the process, she's and how it all works with these mediums, psychics, I think is what she told us is that they get like in their heads, they get pictures like flashcards, and then they get more information from the spirit world, I guess. So I'm sitting there kind of looking, okay, is this for real? I'm like, very skeptical at this point with all of this. And, but it got real when she was in the middle of trying to discuss these pair of creatures from this footprint. That at first she felt one heartbeat, and then she found out that it wasn't just two heartbeats, and she found out it wasn't one individual with two heartbeats. It was one individual carrying another individual, which turned out to be a male carrying a female Sasquatch through the land between the lakes. And they were leaving another area because they were afraid of a bear, and she got a picture of a big bear claw print. And so this couple, Sasquatch couple, were going through the area. That's how they got that print. So as she was discussing that part of it, she kept getting interrupted by a medicine man in the camp area. And she goes, excuse me, I'm sorry to stop and interrupt, but she goes, this medicine man keeps asking me questions of what are we doing out here? And I was like, medicine man, we're all looking over in the general direction. We don't see anything, of course. But she says there's a medicine man there. He's got white hair. He's Indian descent. And he's asking, what is she doing out here? So it's kind of weird and creepy all at the same time. But it goes to show that, some of this woo stuff, there's something to it with the spirit world, because it got me thinking of, how real that part of the world is. But Carol Ann also brought up that day about the wolves that she was hearing, and the lady told her that, well, those are spirit wolves, and they're there to protect you, and that's why you hear them all the time. And she said, well, what about the orbs? We keep seeing them. She goes, I see orbs out here, and my boyfriend sees orbs sometimes because they'll sit there in their truck at night and just listen to the sound, and listen to things around them at night, and they would see orbs fly around. And one of the things that she brought up with these two Sasquatches that were traveling through the land between the lakes was that they were deathly afraid of the blue orbs. They were evil. There was different color orbs, but they were mostly afraid of the blue orbs for
Note
whatever
to self.
reason. Yeah. And
That is not the first time I've heard that.
Yeah.
In
Note
fact,
to
I've heard
self.
that over the years. I have heard that the blue orbs, for whatever reason, are the ones that are no good. And I believe, I may be mistaken, the stories coming out of Skinwalker Ranch,
Mhm.
I want to say they said something about blue orbs. I may be wrong, but I specifically remember, several times hearing that the blue orbs are the bad ones.
Right.
Whatever that means.
Yeah, I don't know, but apparently they're no good. But she also did point out there was a couple portals out there in this area that we camp at a lot and go squatching a lot in. And she goes, yeah, there's a portal over there across the creek and over by the tree. And then as we were meandering around the camp area and outside of the camp area, the oak tree I happened to put my bait on that time. She kept getting a vibe from that tree, and I was like, really? She goes, yeah, can we walk over by that tree? And it's a big century oak tree. It's these huge oak trees, or you can't even put your arm around them. That's how big this thing is. This is the one where I set up my bait, and I had the weird thing happen to my game camera.
Did she know that?
No, she didn't know that, but she did pick up black magic something, and so we went over there. She actually put her hand on the tree, and she was getting some stuff from the tree, and it wasn't black magic. It was people on the property that did black magic, and the owner of the property back then, it was probably not early, but late 1900s. You got to remember, this place here used to be old cattle farm, and it used to be just a road that you traveled on by horse and buggy. That's how old this property is. So she said that they would catch these people on their property that were doing black magic, and they would hang them from this tree. And not only will they hang them, but they would also burn the bodies and then bury the bodies. And I said, really? So I said, well, where would they bury the bodies at? And she goes, well, I'm picking up mounds over here about 100 yards. I said, really? Can we go over there? She goes, yeah. She goes, it starts at the end of the old fence post, which we had a hard time finding, but she said there's a old fence post there, and right off the fence post, you'll see a couple of mounds. Lo and behold, there's a couple of mounds. There's like 3 or 4 of them out there. And I said, so you're telling me if we dug up these mounds, 6 or 8 feet, well, we're going to hit skeletons? She goes, most likely, yes. That's where.
Where was this woman from?
I think she came from the Tampa location.
But she wasn't local to that area.
No, she wasn't looking at the area. She didn't know the area whatsoever. It was her first time being there. She also worked with the sheriff's department for, these cold cases. So she would try to help them with cold cases that they can't break.
Right.
And so she would work with the police and the sheriff's department on those things. So she did uncover some weird stuff. The interesting thing is that my buddy John, that's on our team, a year prior to this event, he had broken his 2 bones in his upper ankle, a year prior to this. While we were under this big oak tree, and she was, getting all this signs and feelings and stuff, he was walking on one of the tree limbs that kind of comes down and swoops down towards the ground, and kind of swoops around. While she was talking, she told John, she goes, "Be careful of your ankle." And she didn't know anything about his ankle. We didn't
Really?
told her about his, and it never came up in my head. And I was like, he goes, "How do you know about my ankle?"
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, so I was like, man, this woman's, she knows her stuff. But yeah, it's
Well, I mean, that's you don't get much of a if you're working for the sheriff's department doing something like that and they take you seriously.
yeah.
If you work for them more than once, actually,
Oh yeah.
it seems like that's a pretty good, indication that there's something going on there. And I totally 100% believe I've had extreme spiritual, uh, life-changing events happen in my life. And I know 100% that there is a spiritual aspect to reality. I do not claim to know at all or understand how it works.
Yep.
I know it exists. I don't go, when it comes to Sasquatch, I don't go looking for this stuff. But like you were talking about before, if something happens, I'm going to report it.
Right.
I'm going to talk about it because I mean, it's tempting to leave stuff like that out because you want people to take the subject seriously. But
Right.
it's like, if you don't include everything that happened, you might as well be lying, because
Exactly.
it's not the same. So that's pretty interesting.
It is, and that, and those are the things that I take, and I say, okay, well, I'm going to take this information and put it in the back of my head, and and save it for later. So, because you never know what you're going to run upon later in life, and doing this sort of thing. But it is interesting how how all these things tie together, um, and it all has to deal with energy. I mean, she said the orbs were energy, and from our bodies are made up of energy. That's what keeps us alive. And when this body is done living, the energy goes somewhere. It continues on.
Right.
So where it goes, I don't know, but it's still energy, still floating around.
Right.
I mean, it's the life force of how we operate. How many times you walk across a carpet, and you can shock things. You can build up just electromagnetic or field in your body, so it's there. And how can that happen and us be almost what 80-90% water? And
Some of us.
some of us, yeah.
Yeah.
Some of
I have a lot
all
of
this
fat.
beer, probably, right?
I have a lot of fat.
I think
So-
I'm about
so I'm-
40% coffee.
Yeah.
I'm like water and fat. That's it.
But so during this journey of our team that we created, in 2010, 20 or not 20, yeah, 2010, 2009, I was contemplating, trying to get an edge on the whole field research stuff. And that's probably right around the same time I was doing my learning survival skills for myself. In 2010, or right before 2010, I decided to get the team and say, hey, you know what will help us out in the field if we get some people to show us how to track, and I found this guy's group. It's called the Enigma Research Group. They're out of Georgia. They were out of Georgia. I'm not sure even if they're even doing it anymore.
Who is
don't.
this? What did you say the name of the group was?
Enigma Research Group.
Okay.
The gentleman's name was Lee Culver. He was there, and they're all retired military. They also worked with search and rescue for many years. And then one day, I think it was the BFRO asked them, hey, if you can track people, can you track a Bigfoot? And they said, well, if it's got a foot, we can track it. So at that point, he started training people with on the BFRO. And that's how I kind of knew about him. He was training them. So I was like, hey, called him up and I was like, hey, you mind if you guys come down and train our team? You know, we'll pay for a class for you guys to come down and teach us some tracking skills. And of course, they did that. And they came down in 2010. That was an awesome class. It was a hard class, learning how to track. So, and of course, I knew one of the skills that they did. The first morning, they got up, and it was the four of them or three of them. Three of them went out to a location. They didn't tell us where at that point yet. They did their thing, came back, brought us back out to the location, and it was just a dirt road. And on the edge of the road, you know, you have the little dirt mounds right there. Well, they made their foot impressions with their shoes, and we broke up into groups. And they said the very first thing you need to do is take out your pad, paper, and your pencil, and you have to draw the footprint with an intricate detail of the grooves in the boot print. And he goes, what that does is trains your mind what you're looking for out in the field. And again, that's kind of how I do with people's encounters. I ask them to, you know, write everything out, write their report out, because that helps them get on the same, you know, remember things a lot better. So the same type of sequence there with the drawing the print of that boot. So now you know what you're looking for. You drew it all out. So now you have to, and it was only like, the end of it was they had a popsicle stick in orange, and they hit it, and you had to look for it at the end of this tracking class. And it took us at least 3 hours to get to that, and it was less than 40 yards.
Wow.
That's how long it took us to do that. Now the fun part was tracking at night. And he goes, believe it or not, you know, I was like, oh man, I said, we kind of suck doing it during the day. How's it going to work at night? You know? But it actually was interesting is it's even easier to do it at night than during the day, because during the day when you're tracking, and search and rescue folks, they only track during certain hours of the day, and that would be between 10 and usually about 2:30, depending on the time of the year, when the sun is not directly above you, but more 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock, because the sun's not shooting straight down on tracks and sign and stuff. So you're better able to see more sign during the early mornings and late early afternoon, and before it gets dark. But at night, you can use flashlights and you can control the light yourself. So, so that they did pretty much the same type of thing that night. And the three of them went out there and they did their trails, you know. So we had to do the same exact sequence and try to find the end of this trail that they did. And it was much easier to do it at night. And it was an awesome class. And if anybody is interested in doing that, I would suggest, you know, finding some people that do that, specifically if they're into search and rescue. And
Well, if these
tracking,
guys, you said they're in Georgia, right?
yeah, they're in Georgia. They used to be in Georgia. I'm not sure what's going on because I think their website is down right now. And I've tried to contact Lee to do some refresher classes and stuff like that, but I failed to be able to contact him. Now he's an interesting fellow with our military. He was very high up, and he's been on every continent or country in the world. And he also teaches remote viewing, and those guys can remote view as well. And they use that part in a lot of that in their search and rescue. I know that for a fact.
Well, if you get a hold of them again, I would like to talk to them 100%.
Okay.
Tracking is something I can do a little bit, but nothing, nowhere near what honestly we need to know to be able to do this better.
Yeah.
Definitely a good tool.
Oh yeah,
It is,
100%.
and of course, if you don't use it, you kind of lose it.
Mhm.
So it's always good to keep training yourself.
And that's what me and last time Lloyd and I went out to our main research area. There's a very large dirt road that goes around pretty much the entire property, and it's super rural area. So there's very little traffic at all.
Mhm.
So for very close to a mile, him and I at night walked that road with a flashlight, holding it at the different angles to try to get the footprints to pop. And it's just amazed.
Mhm.
It's just amazing how many different, like you were saying, how many different tracks you could see at night on these
Oh, yeah.
roads. I mean, it's just like, I would say it's, 4 times the amount that you would normally see during the day. I mean, you
Mhm.
see every single little bump.
Yeah, it's like a animal highway.
Oh yeah.
Well, I've been asked. I've had people say, "Well, how come you only found 1 or 2 tracks and then you can't find any more and all that?" And I was like, "Well, the substrate changed, and I suck at tracking."
Well, yeah. Just got to be honest. Yeah, because
Yeah.
some of these areas, especially in Florida, it's difficult. Unless you're, expert tracker like they are. They
Right.
actually tracked these creatures where it stepped on a log, an old log that was just laying down on an angle. Showed pictures of that, and he goes, "We tracked this particular Sasquatch and tracked its foot because it stepped on the what is it, the let's say algae on the tree. It left a mark on that."
Mm-hmm.
So they actually they saw the mark on the tree, and what it did, as it was running, it stepped on that tree that was felled over and jumped on the back side of it, and they picked up the trail on that end of it, and they kept on tracking it. So, they're amazing guys for tracking, but man, it was an awesome class, and I suggest anyone that if they're wanting to do that, definitely get with some good guys like that to teach you some tracking skills, because that's definitely going to help you out in the field. One of the things he did show us was we were the very first team that he showed the video of the the road crossing one. I think BFRO had it on there, or not BFRO, but Finding Bigfoot had it on their show. Actually, when Lee was coming down to teach us the tracking class, his police officer buddy that they do search and rescue with called him up and said, "Hey man, I got this video of this Sasquatch. Looks like it's a Sasquatch running across the road. You want to have a look at it?" So before as he was coming down to Florida to our class, he pulled in, met him, and the guy gave him the footage of it.
Really?
And he says, "Here's the footage of it." And he goes, "Make of it what you will." So he looked at it and he goes, "That's pretty cool." And as they were coming down, he says, "Hey, I got a little surprise for you guys." He goes, "You guys are going to be the first one to see this footage."
Wow, that's pretty
And,
awesome, man.
And that was amazing. So during his presentation, he showed it on the screen. I was like, "Wow, that's pretty wild." And so it's pretty cool to see it firsthand. But it was pretty amazing. And then, of course, through the class, he was showing us some other different things. He actually tracked a family of these creatures one time. That was in Georgia. He didn't give me the area, of course, but while he was working with BFRO and tracking and doing that with them, he was doing this as well. He was tracking a particular creature, and there's a pretty good size one. It's a male, and he had brought with him on his pack some food, some little trinkets of food. I don't know what exactly it was, but he brought it while he was tracking, and he came up to this area where he saw a lot of tracks all around this area. So as he was walking and looking at these tracks, the Big Daddy one apparently was close by, and he didn't like him in the area, of course, and he did the territorial thing, the breaking of the branches, screaming, hollering, raising holy hell out in the woods. And so he says, I got to be honest. First thing I did is run. And he goes, which is the worst thing to do. He says, but it caught me off guard. He goes, I
Right.
ran for a little while, and he goes, no, I got to stop. And so he stopped. And he goes, I sat down on the ground. And he said, this thing was still doing its thing, coming toward, getting closer to where he's at. And he goes, no, I'm just going to sit here and see what it does. But it never came close to him. So he left the bag of food there and just walked out slowly. And this thing kind of like escorted him out until a certain point, and then it stopped. And, he did that like, I think he said he did that like 3 or 4 more times or 5 more times or something like that. He would come out there in the same scenario. This Daddy would escort him back out. He would drop the food, leave the food there because the food was gone. When he went out there, he saw all the prints around it and all the tracks. So he knew there was a family out there. Well, somehow word got out to the BFRO that this was going on. And he went out there another time, and there was nothing. It was completely quiet. That old track out there, the same tracks that he's seen the previous time, but they were old. So that means they moved on somewhere else.
Right.
And he came back and he told his other buddies, hey, I think they moved on. And from that, one of the other guys goes, oh yeah, I heard that a bunch of people went out there to go research the area.
Oh,
They
no.
got out. So that's what happened, is a bunch of 30 or something people went out there and scared them off, and they moved on to another area.
30 people.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Probably hitting trees and screaming.
Oh yeah. But that guy, that really sucks, because he was making some little bit of headway there. Because I think towards the end, the Big Daddy one, he wouldn't do that anymore. He wouldn't make the ruckus in the woods, but he could hear them. He knew they were out there. You can hear them walking around.
Right.
He wasn't breaking branches and having a tantrum and all that. So he would just drop the food and walk. He said, yeah, I think I'm making some headway here. I'm getting a little closer. They're kind of getting used to me being out here. And then of course that happens, and that scared him out of the area. So it's unfortunate, but he was definitely getting really, really, really close to a group of them. But that's how it goes sometimes, unfortunately. But anyway, and then in 2018, another class we took was a forensic class, and it was a retired sheriff that worked for the sheriff's department. His name was Tim Whitfield, and he worked for the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department. He retired, I think, did 20 years there. So we got him to do a class for us, doing nice little forensic class. It was really interesting the how-tos and all that. Again, that's something that if you don't use, you'll lose. So it's always good to practice. And and I always suggest, if you want to learn more about that, is get somebody that is skilled in those.
Well, I think that's
field.
also a very good tool.
It is. Oh, it is.
That was one of the questions I had with you is, I think that's where some mistakes are made, is how they're accumulating, different things like DNA, hair, different things like that, because there should be a process,
Well, yeah, there's definitely got to be a process, and that's one of the main reasons why we wanted to have that class, is we want to be taught that process. Because if you bring any kind of evidence to the science world, the first thing they're going to ask you is how did you collect this evidence?
Right.
Because first and foremost, if you tell them, oh, I just I picked it up with my hand and this, and immediately they're going to know it's not any good. So
then you get into the transfer of custody, what steps, how many people have handled this.
Exactly. Right. So, all that is is good to learn and keep on hand with you, even if you haven't touched it in a few years, like most of us have done. So it's always I always try to revert back to the old skills or skills I've learned, and try to keep those fresh in my head. Because sometimes you forget. It's like, oh crap, I forgot to do this and I forgot to do that. It's memory muscle type of thing. So it's always good to touch base with it all the time, even if you're just goofing around in the backyard with it. But
Well, yeah, because not all of our tools are equipment. It's not electronics and stuff like that.
a lot of our tools is know-how.
Yep.
And experience. It's kind of like driving a car. It's you never forget, or riding a bike.
Like one of the things I do that I've learned, and this is from animals themselves, is if there's a noise or a movement or something, I freeze. I just stop where I'm at, and not move. Because that's what other animals do. I used to hunt rabbits. That's why I started hunting as a kid. And so as a kid, you're chasing the rabbit. Well, a rabbit will stop and you'll walk right past him.
Yeah.
Panthers do it. They just stop, they crouch down and they just wait. A lot of animals do that. So that's one of the things I do when I'm in the woods where, and it's happened to me a couple times. One time with a group in that same area that you were talking about where Dr. Hewitt goes, we were walking down a trail and there's a doe running right at us, like did not care that there's 4 or 5 guys on the trail, and just kept coming right at us. And that's when I told the guys, stop, kneel down. Something's chasing that deer. And it's way more important than us,
Right.
And sure enough, the deer veered off maybe 20 yards in front of us and went off into the woods. And 2 minutes later, a hunter coming down that path on an electric bike. And
Absolutely.
that's what she feared.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of skills that we can pick up. It's not just equipment that we need. Equipment helps a lot, or it could be hampering us a lot too. But the one of the other things that we had a class on was I had an arborist come down and teach a class about trees. Tell us teach us a little bit of what to look for about trees in their natural state. So we got a hold of a gentleman named Jason Smith. He's a professor at the University of Florida, and he agreed to come down and give us a little class. It was like a little one-day class, and that was really interesting. He told us a lot about how what to look for in trees, and like tree rot and things like that. So what we're looking for, may be a tree break or something like that, or it could be something natural. The tree could have been diseased or had some kind of ailment that made it rot, and you can identify tree rot if it's actual tree rot, or is actually something just broke it, or if it's natural. During hurricanes, tornadoes, that sort of thing. So we gave him a few pictures that we found in the field, and one was that tree that Mike sent a picture of, and I said, "What do you make about that?" So he kind of looked at it, and he goes, "Well," and he had a good point. He goes, "Well, tornadoes can kick up trees and sling them around and throw them," and I'm thinking, I said, "Yeah,"
but there would be a lot more down trees.
I would say, but just one tree, or and where would that tornado damage be located at? And of course we didn't see any damage like tornado damage in the area. But it kind of made him scratch his head a little bit, and and then I showed him another picture that was found out in the green swamp in the hunting area, where 2 cypress trees were found. And this actually Rob Robinson actually found it because he did a report on a hunter out there, and this was in front of the guy's hunting stand. Of course, we verified with the hunter that it wasn't him that made this structure, and he says, as a matter of fact, I don't even hunt out there anymore after that encounter. But I could tell you about that encounter as soon as this. But what it was two cypress trees about 3 inches in diameter, and they were probably about, I don't know, 3 foot apart. And what they did is they came up, and the tops of them were woven into themselves, and it formed an arc. And so I showed him that picture, and they're still alive. I mean, during the summer, you see the greenery on it. During the winter, and it's probably still sitting there today. So I showed him that, and of course, he said, well, the wind could have blown them together, and they could have just. But to me, I mean, I said, well, if that happened, I said, how come we're not seeing more of these out here?
No.
I mean, what's the chances of that happening? If it's if it happens all the time, I can see, wind blows these things around all the time. What's the chances of them doing that more often? Which that was the first time I ever seen anything intricately woven together as a forming an arc. And it wasn't until was it John Bendenegel was in Germany or Russia? I think it was Russia or Germany. He was doing an investigation out there, and I don't know if you guys know him or not. He passed away a few years
Oh,
back.
Yeah.
And he had a picture of the gentleman he was with. That they were showing him an area where they had Sasquatch encounters in this area, and there was a similar tree structure like an arc over there, just like that. It was all woven together. And I said, well, what's the chances of that happening,
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So, and then of course, everyone's heard of these things, probably, leaving braided things out in the woods and, doing things with their hands. I said, only something with opposable thumbs could create something like that other than a human.
Right.
But there's so many things
Well,
we found over the years. It's just, very interesting. And it just proves the point, or brings to point, that we're dealing with some intelligent creatures out here that do not want to be seen and are, doing their best to stay away from humans.
And they do a very good job of it.
Well, it's like you. In the beginning, I leaned really towards it's an unknown primate of some sort.
Yeah.
But through time and being out there, and you listen to the reports, you listen to these people, especially at the conference, you get an opportunity to talk to so many people.
Oh, yeah.
And I spoke to, which was really odd. This is not somebody, and he's a friend on my Facebook now. But remember last year that guy Creature Preacher, or whatever they call him, the guy with the big old school mustache.
I've seen him on TikTok before.
Yeah, and so I got
He
to
talks
talk
like this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's actually a very interesting guy, and we were talking, and he brought up some great points about a proto-human.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It's not a primate, it's a proto-human. It's basically another hominid, a human type that's just living parallel. And it made a lot of sense. So I lean more away from the ape idea that I had, you know what I mean? Because I've heard the noises, I've recorded them, where we're walking out of an area and you hear hoo, 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 and I literally in the video I go, that sounded like a effing gorilla.
A gorilla.
You know what I mean? So but I'm more on that proto, that it's another hominid, and which is intelligent like we are,
And some of them don't even look the same. People say, well, different parts of the country, they all look a little different. Well, so do humans.
Yeah.
We all look a little different.
Oh, the ones that we saw in East Georgia, that it really shocked me. Their face, the way it looked, it was not. Before that, I'd only seen the full body silhouette of one. And it was just massive. But the ones we saw in East Georgia had more of a like a longer face to it.
Mhm.
It just the way it looked just completely threw me off. There hasn't really been I don't even know what to compare it to. Like almost a baboon, but not quite as animalistic. My point is, it did not look as monkey or as human as I thought it should have.
Yeah.
It had its own face,
Right.
like
makes
like a
sense.
completely different species face is what I saw.
Yeah.
It wasn't it definitely wasn't Native American looking. It wasn't really much of any of that's the only thing I could really compare it to is almost a baboon, but not quite as primate looking.
Right.
So I think, you could be right. There could just be physical differences in the same species, or, there's a possibility if there's one of these things, maybe there's other ones. Maybe
Mhm.
there's a couple different types. I don't know. I don't think any of us know, but
Yeah. Unfortunately, we got a long road to hoe.
yeah, we got.
Well,
I mean, no one has accomplished long-term observation
Yeah,
at
and I
all.
think that's what's
You know,
key is doing that. I mean, I came really close to having that opportunity a few years back. This is before the COVID stuff hit and all that. Um, our team and I think a few others we're going to have a great opportunity. I'm just going to give the first name of this gentleman. His name was Doug. Awesome guy. He loved the subject. He was great friends with Jeff Meldrum. Him and his wife, they went to go to dinner all the time. He was so intrigued with this, but he would never set foot into the field. He wanted everybody else to do that and do what they do. So he came to me one day, and he visited. He lived in Kentucky, not too far from, you know, maybe an hour's drive from Land Between the Lakes. And he would go to these conferences and stuff and listen to everything. And he would talk to like Jeff Meldrums and other people, the speakers. And he came across our website one day, and contacted me and said, "Hey, I'd like to hook up with you and talk to you about your team. I think I might have something might interest you." So he had some relatives here in Florida that he visited, and while he was visiting, he hooked up with me to take a dinner date sort of thing. So we met up at a little restaurant here in Lakeland, and so we were sitting there talking and getting to know him. I talked to him a lot over the phone and through text and through emails and stuff, and so we got to get a close kind of a friendship there. And he was asking me questions. He goes, "What's the biggest thing, or what's the hardest thing in this field of research that makes it hard to get to the bottom of it? To discover what these creatures are?" And I basically just flat out and told him, I said, "Well, it's time and money." I said, "We're all mostly a bunch of weekend warriors. We don't have the time. We all got regular jobs. We got bills. We got families, everything." And I said, "We don't have the money or the time to do this." And he goes, "Well, what if you didn't have to worry about that anymore?"
oh my God,
I'm like, "Really?"
I couldn't imagine.
And he goes,
you have
"Yeah."
no idea.
And I said, "Okay, I'm listening." So he was telling me about this plan, which was a pretty awesome plan that he had. And he had a business at the time, and a couple of businesses actually. And he was going to sell one of the businesses to some China outfit or Japanese outfit or something like that. And he dealt in the recycling business, so he had a couple of companies under his belt that he was running. He was going to sell one. And I said, "Well, what kind of opportunity are you offering here?" And he goes, "Well," he goes, "I'm planning on selling a company." He goes, "And with some of the money I'm going to use towards um, this field of research is about 25 mil." And I'm like,
Jesus.
"Okay."
Wow.
I can
that's
get that drone now.
that's just play money, right?
Oh my gosh.
But so I listened, and I was like, okay, I'm in. I'm in. You had me there. I said, how would this go about? How would you do this? And so he told me how he planned on doing this, and he wanted to have teams like ours and other teams across the country to do what you do. If you need equipment, I'll provide equipment. If you need whatever, I'll I'll be able to afford to give it to you. Um, but I want you to be out there as long as it takes.
Yeah.
He goes, "Oh, we'll take care of whatever bills you have. You know, you keep making your bills, blah, that. You know, he had it all down. I mean, this guy knows how to run a business. So I figured, okay, he knows what he's talking about." And but he also talked to scientists. He talked to Jeff Meldrum, and so interesting enough, he found out that there's more scientists that would be on board of doing something like this, and he would have like scientists would be like a hub of where the field researchers would bring their evidence to them, and they would just scientists would do their thing, and you know pick apart all the details and the evidence that we brought them, and they wouldn't have to be under the restraints of what they had to deal with as well. But it was a very, I mean, concrete plan. I mean, this guy was going to do it. Man, I was like, count me in, count us in. And in end of 2020 and beginning of 2021, I luckily got the COVID virus, or the generated virus, if you will.
Yeah.
And I was down. I was in the hospital for like 10 days with that. While I was there, I was doing other research on world events at the time, trying to figure out, okay, what the heck's going on? And that's all I had was time in the hospital. So other than that I didn't want to die in the hospital like everybody else was doing at the time. And I said, I'm not dying in the hospital. So I wanted to get out of there. So I was doing everything I can. My wife was doing everything she could because she worked in the medical field as well. And she made sure those doctors that were seeing me were on making sure I was getting better. And so I eventually got out of the hospital, got home. I was still not 100%, but I was still on oxygen. So I had oxygen still for quite a few weeks afterwards. And so I was looking through Facebook one day, and I came across I haven't heard from Doug in a while. And I knew the conference was coming up in 2021 for the Florida conference. And so I reached out to him, said, hey, Doug, the conference coming up. Hope to see you there, and never heard back from him for a while. So I looked on his Facebook, and I found a post on his Facebook from his daughter. And apparently he passed away
no.
4 months prior.
Wow.
And I was like, man. For one, I was heartbroken that he passed away. But we had a good relationship, good friendly relationship. But he's one of those guys. He can give the shirt off his back for you anyhow.
Right.
So he was one of those kind of guys.
Right.
You kind of have to be to want to fund something like this.
Oh yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I reached out to his daughter and talked to her and tried to get the background of what happened, and so she filled me in, and it was some kind of cancer that he developed. I guess all they can figure is when he was in the military, and developed this cancer, and it just sprung on him all of a sudden. It surfaced in 4 months, and he was gone, of course. But man, I was like, man, how close was the research field.
Right.
Yeah, what an opportunity.
What an
Yeah.
opportunity that would have
Oh,
been.
I would quit. I've said several times. If I could make just what I'm making now, maintain my insurance. I mean, just as long as my financial situation wouldn't go down any, I'd quit my
Right.
job tomorrow. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll work for a massive company. I mean, I'll be the rest of my life. No complaints. But
Yeah.
I would quit tomorrow
Yeah.
for an opportunity like that.
That's
you
what I
know?
was ready to. That's what I was ready to do. I was like, all right, count
Right.
me in, because I'll
Don't
And that's
forget
what's gonna
me,
take.
guys. Don't
Yeah.
forget
Oh,
me,
yeah.
guys. I
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
go.
Richard.
Well,
I
that's
want
what
to
it's
go.
going to take. It's going to take people being in,
Yeah.
uh,
And
like
time and money.
like on
that's what it
my
takes.
property. There's probably 4 months out of the year where I get activity,
Yeah.
and when I do have that activity, I'm out there night after night after night after night after night after night after night, and that's just to get, I only make, I might get 10 pieces of evidence of activity or vocals in a year
Right.
out of being in the woods, 80 nights in those, I mean, it's
Yeah.
just, it's, that's
It's
what it's
aggravating.
going to take. Yeah, it
Yeah,
definitely is aggravating.
It's aggravating.
It is
It is.
aggravating.
But it just and on a personal note, unfortunately, when these people like this pass away, and they had this goal in their mind of trying to get to the bottom of this. That's kind of what makes me keep going. People say,
Yeah.
"Oh, you've been in this for that long, and you really haven't seen one. Why are you still in it?" And all this. I said, "Well, it's because of that."
Yeah.
You know, the
Well,
people
they're out
before
there.
us.
I think the time is worth it. I mean,
Oh
to
yeah.
me, if I was a
It is.
millionaire, I mean, this is all I would do. This
And
is what,
I always look at it as that 7-year-old always wanting to know. It'd be really cool if those things really did exist out there. So that's I always look back as my 7-year-old self wanting to continue on. So
well,
that's
it's
how I
just
look at it.
super, super fascinating. I've never,
Yeah.
and I can't tell you exactly why. And I mean, I guess it's the same reason why sometimes these things completely scare someone out of the woods for the rest of their lives, or you become completely and totally infatuated with them. And
Yeah.
it just got a hold of me, and I'm infatuated, and it's the most interesting thing I've
Yep.
ever come across.
Right.
I think,
so.
yeah. And I that's why I enjoy the Bigfoot conference every year, because you go to a place, it's a lot of like-minded people. And
Yeah.
they share their experiences, they share their ideas, they share their theories, they talk about different equipment, they talk about different things. And that'd be the place you'd run into a guy like that. He's there,
Exactly.
he's listening, he's paying attention, and then he's like, hey, I got money, let's do this thing. That's what I want to run into. You know what I
Well,
mean?
yeah, that's what I always say on these podcast shows. If someone's like that is able to fund something like this, please do. I mean, it's especially if they feel the same way. If they're intrigued with this subject,
Right.
and they want to know more. They want to get to the bottom of it. They don't necessarily want to be the one going out in the field and doing that, but that's quite all right if you do too. I mean, that's it's
Right.
totally up to them. But it's definitely time and money thing. And no university is going to support any scientist going out and doing this.
Yeah, they want a date.
They're
They're
not
going to want, all right, well, here in 18 months, I can do this. Well,
They
you
won't
don't know
do it.
that.
They won't do it until you throw a body or a piece of body on us
Yep.
in front.
Well,
of
I've always said that
Yeah.
is it's
and
we'll
even
never
if they do that, they may just make that disappear.
there's nobody doing social media, YouTube, or anything like that that's going to make enough money to fund research.
No.
It's going to take an outside sponsor, somebody outside of the spectrum that's going to fund any kind of serious.
Maybe if there's a way we can get some of that money from Ukraine, that might be a good idea.
I don't think they'll have any left.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Good luck.
I think they spend it all right away.
Yeah. That's not going to
Yeah.
happen. There's a whole lot of, man, there's a lot of money floating around out there.
Oh, yeah.
Would
There,
definitely
there's
change a lot.
yeah, and it would just only benefit us because we probably I got a funny suspicion that the people in power that be, I'm sure they know these things are out there.
Yeah, I'm a big believer of that.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
know.
yeah.
They know.
Well,
They know.
there's one thing I'll leave with you tonight too for your listeners on our website, and it's on our encounters page,
Well,
and
talk
it's
talk about your website. Go ahead and push that.
okay.
Go ahead and
Yeah.
talk about it.
Again, our website's isrtusa.com. Go there. There's lots of information. Things you can take away from it and learn some things. Or the encounters page is I was going to bring up with. There's a lot of reports that we put on there. Not necessarily all the reports in Florida because that's I don't have all those reports, but there's a good chunk of them on our website that you can look through. One of them, a couple of them that are too long to put on there, and it's just basically a podcast from Wes's show, Sasquatch Chronicles. And I always bring this up in other podcast shows, but it kind of shows you how these creatures are here in Florida. One of the gentlemen by the name of Steve, got to meet him really well, really great guy. Had an encounter, probably the most aggressive encounter in Florida. Is on the east coast of Florida, and he knew a little bit about Bigfoot, haha, joke, maybe, I don't know if it's real. Didn't put too much into it, of course. But he unfortunately had a bad encounter with one of these creatures, and it charged him. And there's a second episode of that podcast show that kind of goes down the rabbit hole on how serious these things are, how some of these agencies, if these things didn't exist, then why are they putting so much time and effort to keep it quiet? So if your listeners are intrigued with stories like that and real true encounters, listen to those. Listen to that podcast show. It's listed on our encounters page because his report was too lengthy to put in words. He had PTSD for a long time after that encounter. He does a lot of fishing, and he was out there on the kayak checking out an area for a competition that was coming up, I think the following week. And this was pretty fresh because I would listen to Wes's show and just listen to all these people's encounters. And this came across, and I contacted Wes. And I said, "You got to give him my information, dude." I said, this isn't that far from where I live, about 2-hour drive. But anyhow, it was so incredible that I wanted to go out there to that location. Me and another gentleman on our team actually got out there, and it's pretty doggone thick out there. I think a couple of families of these things could probably live out there. And yeah, it's really interesting. And the title of it, if you're looking through the page, is there on our encounters page. It's going to be titled "It Had a Look Like I Just Want to Kill You." And there's the first episode, and then there's a second episode where he came back and talked about what happened when his FWC buddy went and made him go back out there with him to the same location to go check out this area, only because that his FWC buddy heard around the department that the creature he was identifying or spoke to him about what it looked like, they were getting reports of that from other people in the same area. So
Right.
So it wasn't a big secret that this creature was out there. But if you
Well,
want to,
David, I think that sounds like the exact spot that you, me, and Richard need to go to
yeah,
I'm
one
in.
day.
I'm in. I'm in.
Let's do it.
Okay.
it's very hard. we got to it by boat on a pontoon boat. Me and Willie, one of the guys on our team. We actually got a permit, and there's some islands out there we got a permit to camp on, and
Dude, that's awesome.
we spent the night on the islands there. And then first night we spent the night there because we got out there so late at night and set up camp on the island. Next morning, our plan was to go to the shore where this encounter happened, and had Steve was able to give us the coordinates of it, GPS coordinates of it, and so we had a good idea of where it was at.
Did the event happen while he was fishing?
Yeah, he was fishing. He was checking out the area for redfish, and
I think I remember the
Yeah.
podcast.
and that's when this thing charged him. But it indicates how aggressive these things can be if they want to be towards humans. And it also shows you two different scenarios. If you're by yourself or you have somebody with you, you'll have two different types of encounters.
Right.
And the second one was very mild. It wasn't really nothing other than the FWC officer saw it.
No.
Wow.
And he did not tell Steve that he saw it.
Oh man.
Because he didn't want to freak Steve out.
Right. Right.
He just said, get your gun, get your gun, get your gun. We got to go. We got to go. But unfortunately, it takes a bad turn because, well, if you listen to the podcast show, you'll see how far the rabbit hole goes on all this, and that just kind of explains, how quiet they want to keep these things,
Yeah.
And
I've ran
the
into an
lengths.
encounter like that where I was
Yeah, and this
told to
happens
go
all over.
uncertain terms.
Yeah, this happens all over the country. I mean,
Yeah.
people. It happens to everybody.
Well, lucky for us, we have an attorney that will jump on the opportunity if any kind of government agency wants to shut us up.
Oh yeah.
I think I know
Lenny's
you're
ready
talking
to
about.
attack.
He's ready to go, man. He is in our
Mr.
back
Athos
pocket.
is ready to go.
He's waiting for it. He's just daring them to tell us no.
Is that
you
the
can't.
gentleman from
He's
I
from
hadn't-
Miami.
but he was had an encounter somewhat outside of west of Cocoa Beach.
I don't think
I don't think Lenny's
Lenny
had
has
a he was on our very first podcast. We
Oh.
brought him on first. He's the one that has helped with the affidavit process, which we're kind of revisiting. Him and I are talking about rewriting it, making it easier and less of I don't know. We just took input from people, so we're still working on all that. But yeah, he's the one that helped us with that. But
Those are
yeah, I
always
don't
good
think
to
he's
have.
had an encounter though. I don't
Yeah.
believe.
but he's very into the field, and that was one of the things that he made very clear that if there's any agency that wants to silence people in general for about this subject, he'll
Yeah.
take on that battle. He'll
Yeah.
take that battle.
That's one thing we got to protect here in our country is that free speech.
Oh yeah.
And that's
It's on the
seems
way
like-
out, and unfortunately, a lot of people are completely okay with it. It's very scary.
That is
Cheap.
scary.
Cheap.
Very scary.
That is scary. I mean, I hate to say it, man, if we lose our ground here, there's no turning back. And but
Well-
I got a sneaky suspicion things are going to turn around here soon.
Yeah, I think so too. So here's the key thing is we brought it up earlier and I opened that door for Jonny, but we got the Bigfoot conference coming up in April, and it's big. It's huge. It's a beautiful location. Isn't it? It is.
It is.
Just
It's awesome. It's like
it's
it's
in a
Disney World for equestrian horse.
yeah,
people.
it's a equestrian. So it's rolling grassy
Oh, yeah.
hills and white picket fences.
And they're-
Then you got this auditorium there,
oh,
and
gosh,
it's just gorgeous. And the
huge.
building itself is just massive,
Yeah.
massive. And they fill it.
They
There'll be a couple thousand people in there. So I opened that door to Johnny. Johnny, I'm going for sure. I know Dave will be there. I see Dave there every year. That
Yes.
door's open for you to come, dude. You got a
I'll
free
be
room.
I will be putting the request to my employer off for that Sunday. So
Yeah,
I
please do.
I
Please
definitely
do.
want to go. Definitely.
Um,
David,
the
man,
first
we
time
really
I
appreciate you being
saw-
on with us.
Oh well, thank you, thank
What
you.
were you saying? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
I was
interrupt you.
saying that the first conference they had here was awesome. I enjoyed it. I spoke at the first one. Um, it was really great. Actually, I met Bobo and
Mhm.
and Cliff,
No.
and they're really good guys.
I
Uh,
liked Renee.
yeah, Renee was awesome the last time we
She was probably one of the nicest people
Yeah.
I've ever met, and really would take the time to talk to each
Yeah.
and every person that approached her.
So they have quite a few good speakers that come. Jeff was there, of course.
Yeah, that was great.
But it's funny because people were asking me years ago about, hey, we need to get a conference here in Florida, something going. So I said, okay, well, I need to research this a little more and do some homework. When I hit 50, believe it or not, I'm that old. Um,
I turned 56 this month.
my one the birthday present for me was to go to the International Bigfoot Conference up in Washington State. That's the one that Russell Acord put on, and I got to meet Bob Gimlin. The sole purpose of going up there was just to meet Bob Gimlin for the first time in my life. I would just want to shake his hand and see him and
He
talk.
started this.
Yeah, he did. Him and Roger did, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to. Roger passed away, but like what 5 or 6 years after that film footage was taken,
I think less than that. I
was
think
it?
just
Yeah, I think
like
it was.
2 years. 2
He had,
years.
he developed cancer and passed away.
Yeah.
But so I got to meet a lot of people there. I met Adam Davies, which
Mm-hmm.
he actually went out to the location where Steve's encounter was with us. That was an awesome weekend with him. And actually, Adam Davis been down here with us researching like quite a few times already. And hopefully we'll be able to get him back down here and do some more, or us go up there to see him. He's up in Tennessee now, but
Well, we need to make an effort for me and you to get together at some point because we're, like I said, we're not
Yeah.
far from each other. It's just,
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
always just time and money. That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
You know,
That's
and
it.
I got plenty of time, so you bring all the money.
I'll scrounge some up. I'll get my guy on it.
Yeah. And I told you, and I've said this way in the past, even before we even created a podcast, was, you have an open invite anytime you want.
Thank
If
Thank
you got
appreciate
free
it.
time, you
And
say, Rick, I got
you
a
as
free
well.
time. Let's do it. And I'll tell you where to meet me, and we'll go out and do our thing. And I'm sure I can learn a lot from you, a lot. So,
Yeah. And I want to give a shout out to Marty and Nikki.
yes.
Because of the conference coming up in 2025. They put on an awesome conference. They work hard. They bang it out. These past couple of ones, I think, are getting much recognition now. I think they're getting every year. I think they get bigger and
Right.
bigger.
Yeah, I think the top
Um,
3 every year is the Bigfoot Cruise,
Yep.
Gatlinburg, and this one.
Yep.
Yeah. Now they did announce one of the speakers already. They just announced the first one this week, but I know of a second one, but I'm not allowed to mention. I'm not allowed to say it, but I do know another one that is going to be there. And then, of course, RPG is going to be the master of ceremonies again, and he does such a fantastic job. Such a fantastic job, and when he heard that we were doing a podcast, he hit me up right away and said, congratulations, man, you guys are going to do great and all that. He's a bundle of energy.
Oh, he is. He's awesome to be out in the field with.
You can't help but be positive around him.
Oh yeah, RPG is awesome. He's so entertaining and so energetic, and I don't know where he finds the time or the energy.
He does though.
He does. I mean, and they're also going to have a Bigfoot cruise here in Florida. Did you see that? Yeah, that's another cruise, not the Washington one or the
Alaska
one, but the one they're going to sail out of Miami, I think.
Oh wow!
And they're going to do a cruise down there as well.
Is there Bigfoots in the Bahamas? Because I'm in it.
I don't know. I have to get with Adam on that and see if there's any kind of any critters down there, or Lyle Blackburn or Ken
Yeah.
Gerhardt. You know,
Maybe there's Sasquatch in Jamaica.
maybe so, maybe so. But yeah, I encourage you, Johnny, come on down and at least come to the conference and see what it's all about and check us out. And,
Oh, definitely, 100%. I will.
You'll have a good time, I promise.
See, but only thing I got planned for this year is a new baby. That's it. Other than that, we're good to go.
not-
If it doesn't
it's not
fall on
coming
that
in
day,
April.
we're good.
Yeah.
It's
Not
not-
coming in April. But
no.
I'm
In
telling
fact,
you,
it's a
Johnny,
good thing that it's going to happen in April, because after the baby's born, I probably won't have very much time at all. So,
right.
You just
Anyway.
strap that baby on and hit the woods, man.
yeah, definitely.
You teach that baby to enjoy the same things you enjoy.
Yeah, my buddy Mike Taylor, he's got a niece that lives out. Actually, married a gentleman that's Native American, and they live on a reservation way out in the middle of somewhere. I can't remember, but she was sending him pictures of them hunting with a baby that's like, I don't even know, probably, if a month old, I'd be surprised, but they had him strapped and covered and out there bow hunting with this little baby. I was like, yeah, that's the way to do it. All right, gentlemen. Well, David, we really appreciate it. And I'd like to talk to you again before the conference, actually, because, 25 years of experience. I definitely don't know everything there is to know. So, but we appreciate you coming on and sharing it.
I don't claim I do either.
Definitely, I want everybody to check out your website. Definitely check that out.
Check it out. Yeah.
If you don't know, please go to Johnny's page, Sasquatch Encounter Brigade. He's got some great stuff on there. He's getting closer and closer as every year goes by.
Like David said, I'm getting close, but it sure does get frustrating from time to time.
And please check out my channel, BFFG Bigfoot Research. All of us on the show tonight are active. We research. We're out there doing this thing. And same with Randy. Randy's in the chat room, and I give him kudos, because that is one man that thinks outside the box, and he's doing it too. He's spending a lot of time in the woods. So check out Sensible Bigfoot Project. Go to his site, check him out, and what a great show. I mean, this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
I feel like we only touched just the top of it,
That's why you can come back anytime, Dave.
Yeah, you can come back anytime, man. And I don't want, definitely. That's why I say at the very beginning, you talk about what you want to talk about, and we'll, there's probably, like you said, there's more to unpack. So guess what the answer to that is? We just have you on again until we get it all unpacked.
And I'll tell you what, I got a gentleman on our team. His name's Pat, and I'm going to throw his name out there, Pat. And he's got some, if you like encounters too, he's had some.
Hit us up.
He's had some encounters that are not in state of Florida. He's been to Alabama, Oklahoma, and all those. He's got some really good encounter stories to talk about.
Well, excellent. Have him, for anybody out there, this goes for researchers or witnesses. We are, obviously we're new, but, we're doing an interview every 2 weeks now, but the more witnesses and the more researchers that come forward and want to be a part of this, we can do it more often,
Yep. Blue-eyed Northern, Ohio Bigfoot that was in here, any of you guys.
Right. So, we take all comers, but Richard's the one doing the scheduling. We figured we have one person handle that, so we're not crossing over each other. So reach out to Richard or send an email to sasquatchunredacted@gmail.com and hit us up, and we'll see if we can't get y'all on here.
Yep.
But gentlemen, it's been a pleasure and
been an honor being here. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you,
man. We appreciate your time.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do a part 2 or something. We can talk some more.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, we can do it, man.
Yeah.
And I hope your wife's feeling better. I hope everything's going good.
She's doing good. I got her on a camera here. I keep an eyeball on her, so she's doing okay. So she's passed out, so she's sleeping.
Oh, well, that's good.
So,
All right.
but,
Well, everybody in the chat, thank you guys for joining. And we will see everyone later on. David, thank you again. Richard, hope you have a good weekend. And we are out of here. Thank you for watching Sasquatch Unredacted.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Y'all have a good
Peace.
evening.
God bless.